طلع البدر علينا من ثنيات الوداع وجب الشكر علينا ما دعا لله داع.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. وبعد. Last session we spoke about the beginning of the journey of the Hijrah to Medina and what led to it. Now Rasulullah SAW and Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, his companion, were on the journey. Now as Rasulullah SAW came to the outskirts in the night, on the last part of Makkah, Rasulullah SAW looked back and he had such grief that subhanAllah, he's leaving his homeland, Makkah, the blessed land which he loves so much. And subhanAllah, who had to leave. Just imagine, the sadness that he went through. And this is again the prophecy of Waqi'ah in Nawfal, where he mentioned that he will be expelled by his people. And subhanAllah, it was only after 8 years or so when Rasulullah came back for Umratul Qada that he came back to his lands. And then again, of course, Fatul Makkah. But he was expelled for so many years. And this gave Rasulullah a lot of grief. But they went through this sacrifice and difficulty for the propagation of Deen and spreading Islam. As we know, Islam grew even further later on. But he was with Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, and they went south. They went south, which is not the normal journey where they will go north, which was the caravan route. But this was something that they were planning and they plotted. And this is something that we know from hadith, that the wise man is the one who plans. And even in the West, they have a saying that failure to plan is planning to fail. So they came up with a very good plan to avoid the people looking for them, because in Makkah they were seen as fugitives and other things. And subhanAllah, this is something that we need to have as well, where we plan and strategize on things. So they went south towards Yemen and they went to Jabal Thawr, Mount Thawr. And subhanAllah, there they stayed for 3 days. Now Jabal Thawr is actually like had a small opening. There was only enough space for like 2 people. And it was the opening was near the bottom. So if someone was to stand there, it would be near the feet. So they went there and they stayed there for 3 days. Our beloved Prophet ﷺ, he rested on the thighs of Abu Bakr radiallahu anh. And Abu Bakr radiallahu anh was of course very concerned about our beloved Prophet ﷺ. And we all know the love, the friendship they had. There was one case where Rasulullah ﷺ was sleeping and Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, and that time he got stung by a scorpion. And those that have been stung, or how painful this is. And it was so painful. Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, he did not want to make any noise, but because of the pain, tears came out from his eyes and he fell on Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this woke Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam up, and he saw that Abu Bakr radiallahu anh got stung. But again, subhanAllah, showing the love that he didn't want to wake him up, he wanted him to sleep. He was biting in the pain. But what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did was that he put some of his saliva on the part where he was stung. And subhanAllah, this took the pain away. Again, this is a mu'jiza of our beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, a miracle to Abu Bakr radiallahu anh. Now, while they were in the cave for 3 nights, Abu Bakr radiallahu anh made a plan, and he had certain people, 3 people in particular, to cater for them while they were in the cave. Now, who are these 3 people? Firstly, it was his son Abdullah ibn Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, who was someone who was young and who was very strong. He was responsible for bringing food and nutrition to both of them. And he would normally come around night time and he would stay the night. And his second responsibility was for him to spy on the Quraysh and others, to see if they are on their trail, or if they have if they are close to finding them. So that way they can change their plans and other things. So he would come every night and he'll stay with them and he'll bring them food. So that's number 1, Abdullah. Second person was someone called Amir ibn Fuhayra. He was actually a freed slave of Abu Bakr radiallahu anh. When I say a freed slave, subhanAllah, Abu Bakr radiallahu anh was known for his generosity. It was said that over 90% of his wealth he used to free slaves, subhanAllah. We know the famous story of Bilal radiallahu anh, when he was being tortured and how he freed him. So this is again the generosity that he had. So he had full loyalty to Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. So what his responsibility was, that he would be a shepherd. So he would be told to take some of his sheep and cover up the trail of Abdullah. So he will go and he will cover up, and when he will come to the cave, he will give them milk. And subhanAllah, so he would do this for these days. The third person they hired, and it's quite interesting, is Abdullah ibn Arqat. SubhanAllah, he was someone who was a Bedouin, and he knew the routes leading to Medina. He knew the different routes. A lot of times people will go the normal caravan route, but he went, he took them for a different route, which was actually parallel to the normal route, but it was a route that people will not normally take. So he was like their guide. Something interesting about this is, inshallah, which we will cover, is that we know both of them had a big bounty on their heads. The Quraysh and the enemies were eager to capture them, that they were willing to give 100 camels. 100 camels, just one was a lot. But they were willing to give 100 camels to find Abu Bakr or Rasulullah ﷺ dead or alive. So he could have easily taken his bounty, but he was willing to, subhanAllah, because there was someone who was trustworthy, he kept to his word and he guided them to Medina, subhanAllah. So these are the three main people that they had. So again, part of the plan was this. So this Abdullah ibn Arqad, he came on the morning after the third night, and he came and he took them through a different route. But before this, there was an interesting incident where, subhanAllah, Abu Jahl and others, they hired an expert scouter, someone who knew from the camels, from their dung and other things, where the camels been. So he was told to follow the trail of these camels, and they actually came to the foot of Jabal Thawr, and there they had Abu Jahl and many of the leading enemies. And subhanAllah, just imagine you're in their shoes and how you would feel. And subhanAllah, Abu Bakr, he looked out and he saw Abu Jahl and others, and of course he would panic and he would be worried at this instant that they're so close and they will find them. And Rasulullah ﷺ, he had tawakkul, he knew Allah is a protector, and he said to Abu Bakr, Uskut, silence, Abu Bakr, what do you think of those two, meaning referring them two, and the third is Allah, subhanAllah, meaning Allah is with them, subhanAllah. And this is how we should have tawakkul in Allah, that whenever we're in difficulties and we're working for the sake of Allah, inshallah Allah's help will be there. And there's some narrations mention how subhanAllah, there was like a spider's web, and some narrations say there was a bird there, Allahu A'lam. But point from this is that they came to the cave. All they had to do is look down and they would find Abu Bakr and our beloved Prophet ﷺ, and that will be the end of them. But Allah protected them. Allah willed for them not to look down. And subhanAllah, Allah will help His deen. And we know from Quran, in tansurullah yansurukum, if you help the deen of Allah, Allah will help you. And anything can be the soldier of Allah, let it be a spider, a bird, whatever it is, Allah could protect. So they came and they didn't find, and they got frustrated and they had to go back. Now subhanAllah, after these 3 days they were protected, and after the 3 days they wanted to take the road to Medina. So as I mentioned, Abdullah ibn Arqad, he was their guide, and they started the journey, and he went on a different route parallel to the normal route. So it was a longer route, and subhanAllah, now actually part of this route they made it into a highway. And subhanAllah, with Allah's tawfiq, we were blessed to actually cycle that Hijrah route as well, which is the highway that leads to Medina, subhanAllah, towards Masjid Quba. But anyway, just few incidents that happened on the actual journey. There's one incident of Suraqa ibn Malik, who was someone who was a leader of the Bedouins, and he got wind, or he heard about the news that there's 100 camels promised whoever finds Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And subhanAllah, he wanted this. bounty, and it's something huge. It's like being like a millionaire of the time. It's a large amount. As I mentioned previously, Rasulullah didn't even own one camel, so 100 camels. So there was someone who went to him and said that they saw these three. He became excited and said, "I saw these three men," and he thinks it's Abu Bakr and Rasulullah, and they heard about the guide. So Suraqa, being greedy, he wanted the bounty for himself. So he said, "No, this could be just these travelers and not anyone else." So, and then he secretly went, and he wanted to take the full bounty himself. So he went and he took his army equipment, his arms and his horse, and he went on his way. And he actually came close to Rasulullah and Abu Bakr and the guide. So what happened was, from the distance, he fell over on his animal, subhanallah. And what happened, this was someone who was very well trained. He actually never ever fell from his horse prior to that, but in this instant he fell. So what happened was, he in a jahil way, he did some lots to say should he go, and he actually said not to, but then he wanted to go closer, and then he went closer, but then again he fell. And then what happened was, he got up and he wanted the bounty. And at this moment, just Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, he was sometimes at the back, sometimes at the front. He was looking back. He was so worried about any harm coming to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Again, showing his love for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then Suraqa, he came so close. He came to a distance, which is like if you were to yell, they could hear him. And what happened there is that he fell again. Subhanallah. And this is again the protection from Allah on Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And in this instance, Abu Bakr was also very worried. But at the same time, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was very calm, and he was just reading Quran, because he knew he had the protection of Allah. And this is tawakkul. So when he fell for the third time, he knew that subhanallah, Rasulullah was someone special and that Islam was spread. So eventually he wanted some kind of agreement from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that that he will get protection from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So just think about this instance. In one moment, he wanted to kill them for the bounty, but again, seeing the protection that he had, he knew that he was special. He wanted protection from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and Rasulullah agreed, and he got Abdullah bin Arqad to write something that gives him protection. And after many years, after 8 years or so, he utilized that for his protection. But again, subhanallah, how Allah protected Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because he could have easily killed for the 100 camels and got that bounty. So again, Allah protected him. And there was another incident as well, where on the journey they came to a tent, and in that tent there was someone called Ma'bad. They lived there, and they had like animals that were there, and they were traveling. They didn't have much, so they asked for some kind of nutrition, but they didn't have anything because of the poverty. But subhanallah, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said to allow him to milk the animal, and again a miracle, that the animal gave so much milk that subhanallah, it was more than enough for them and many others. And prior to that, it would not give any milk. So again, subhanallah, the miracles of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam are numerous, and the help of Allah are many. And then they went on their way, and subhanallah, they went towards Medina. And subhanallah, in this session I'll end it here, but in the next session I'll speak about when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam enters Medina, the welcome that he gets, and some of his priorities in terms of when they first went and established the Islamic State. So jazakumullah khair for listening. This I'll end wa akhiru da'wan alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen wa subhanakallahumma bihamdik ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.